In Gotham City, Batman finds his contact, a vigilante who calls himself Azrael. The man has been badly wounded, and the Dark Knight asks, "Azrael, who did this to you?" The man responds, "You did." Perplexed by this event, Batman goes to his cousin, Kate Kane, also known as the hero Batwoman, for help on the matter. He found advanced tech on the crime scene near Azrael. Worse still, Batman believes that this small piece of technology is part of a much larger, hidden network. Bruce asks Kate for help in investigating this, but they aren't going to work alone. Spoiler, also known as Stephanie Brown. Red Robin, real name Tim Drake. Cassandra Cain, codename Morphin. Clayface, a former actor named Basil Carlo, turned villain, who has been given a chance at redemption. Some have more experience than others, but most are relatively new. Tim Drake will be useful as a sort of lieutenant for the team. It won't be easy, and for most of these would-be heroes, it is going to feel an awful lot like boot camp. This team will need to be ready. They're going to need the training, for they are about to face an army. As the rest of the team sets up in the Belfry, Batman goes out to investigate the tech, only to find its origins have laid a trap for him. A group of armed men dressed as the Dark Knight force Bruce off-road, and are actually able to overpower and defeat him with their advanced technology and overwhelming numbers. This news reaches Kate and Tim, who are deeply disturbed by the footage of this attack. The attackers fought with military precision and claim to be part of a mysterious group called the Colony. They know little else, but Batman is gone, and they have no lead as to what happened to him. With little choice, Batwoman calls the team together. Though the team was supposed to complete training before they began active duty, the fight begins now. With the help of Kate's father, the Colony is able to attack the Belfry, beginning the attack by knocking the deadly Cassandra Cain out cold. Inspired by Batman, he has begun a true war. Not against crime, but against the real threats posed to humanity. They aren't the bad guys, which is why they haven't killed Batman or his detectives, yet. But they have been operating for a long time. This is Kate's legacy, the thing her father has been training her for since she was a child. Kate refuses to go along with this, and the entire team rejects the Colony's offer for them to join their ranks. With some effort, they flee the Colony's forces. Meanwhile, Batman is able to escape captivity, only to find himself trapped in the massive headquarters of the Colony. He discovers this military group has learned from Batman as far back as the events of the Zero Year, and have been using the Dark Knight's tactics to brutal effectiveness abroad, without any concern for human life. Enraged, Batman lashes out, only to be cornered by Kate's father. He reveals to the Dark Knight that the League of Shadows, a mythical group Bruce thought was dreamt up by Ra's al Ghul's followers, is not only real, but deeply embedded within Gotham. The Colony is therefore the only thing that can stop them, but Bruce won't be around to see it. Just before Batman is finished off, Kate and her team arrive and attack. Chaos erupts in the base, but the Colony's numbers are too great to be defeated outright. The team flees, though not before Batman promises that this gross misuse of his name is over. Colonel Kane disagrees. He launches a fleet of drones at a series of targets throughout Gotham as an early, preemptive strike against the League of Shadows. The detectives move out to stop these drones. Batman vows nobody dies tonight, not on their watch, no matter what these targets may have done or who they are. Together, the team begins evacuating the targets from across Gotham, but Tim Drake comes up with another plan to stop the drones entirely. Hacking into the drones' computers, Tim is unable to stop the attack, so instead, he reduces the number of targets to just one person, himself. Though Batman and Batwoman try and stop Tim from doing this, and even manage to capture Kate's father, they are unable to save Tim from the attacking drones. Tim Drake is killed by the overwhelming power of this advanced technology, leaving the team devastated, especially Batman and Tim's girlfriend, Spoiler. Bruce is left particularly shaken after he learns Tim was just accepted into a prestigious school within days of his untimely death. Unbeknownst to them, Red Robin wakes up in a mysterious cell. Mr. Oz greets the young man, explaining that he was making too many connections with the world as it was, not as it is. It became necessary to remove Tim from the field. Robin swears this isn't over. His friends will come for him. Mr. Oz replies that, as always, the boy is right. This isn't even close to over. In the months following these events, the team is unable to shake the feelings of loss, especially with Stephanie. But life goes on, and danger does not take long to rear its ugly head. When a group of monsters attack the city, Nightwing, Duke Thomas, Alfred Pennyworth, and the new and inexperienced hero Gotham Girl help the detectives save the city from these creatures. It is discovered that Hugo Strange is the one that unleashed this attack, but he is defeated by our detectives, who refuse to let Tim's death stop them from doing the right thing. The team next goes up against a group of strange-looking villains called the Victims Syndicate. Claiming to have their lives destroyed by Batman and the detectives, and their inability to prevent destruction, and viewing the Dark Knight's cooperative, unregulated relationship with the authorities as a fundamentally corrupt form of tyranny, they declare open war against Batman and his allies. In response to this, Batman calls in his ally Batwing, Luke Fox, son of Bruce's close friend Lucius, to help the detectives out. He is officially added to the team's roster. The group, along with several police officers, close in on the Victim Syndicate, only for their leader to insist that they talk instead of fight when the villains are confronted. The leader, clad in red but familiar with Batman, as if they know one another, talks of all the damage and pain Batman's reign of terror has inflicted on their city. Batman has heard it all before, and the team begins breaking off into a fight. But the victims are able to trick the surrounding police into badly wounding one another, while the new villains use this chaos to escape. Spoiler is left badly wounded by the event, while Clayface, confronted with the pain he caused one of his victims during his days as a villain, is shaken by the encounter. The victims begin hunting the team down one by one, ultimately leading Spoiler into attacking the other detectives out of frustration over Tim's death. Batman manages to talk her down, admitting his own faults and saying he's not perfect. Together, the detectives defeat the victims, bringing them into custody. However, the encounter and the loss of Tim is too much for Spoiler, so Stephanie decides to leave the team. Batman vows to keep an eye on her, worried about the young woman, but lets her grieve on her own, in her own way, on her own terms, giving her the space she clearly needs. The victim's leader, who has no known fingerprints, DNA, or ID on record, considers this all a win, having broken a member of Batman's team and forced the Dark Knight to admit his own shortcomings. Days later, Clayface visits Arkham in an attempt to make amends with his victim. He explains he is sorry for his past actions. He really is trying to do better. He offers to visit this victim, Glory, every week, and the two start talking about Clayface's past as an actor. Meanwhile, Tim manages to engineer an escape from his cell, only for him to be immediately teleported back in. He doesn't understand what is going on, but Mr. Oz promises that he will, soon. In the weeks that follow, Orphan helps take down a human trafficking ring, and Batman is impressed. The girl is skilled, but needs to learn her own strength, and when to stop or hold back. Batman is worried about a recent offer from the mayor, who wants to work with the Dark Knight for the better of Gotham. Bruce asks if Cassandra knows anything about the situation or if he can trust the mayor's offer. She denies knowing anything, but Batman can tell Orphan is hiding something. Batman has always been a little leery about Cassandra. He cares about her, but is worried. He can still see the danger in this woman, the weapon she was forged into by her father. Cassandra has had a lot of trouble coping with a normal life. She was nothing but a cold-blooded killer when they first met, but Batman saw something more in her, a real person she could become with the right support. Elsewhere, Luke crafts a special device to allow Basil to transform more freely between Clay and his human form. However, both forms are causing him long-term issues that need to be addressed for the good of his health. The clay form degrades his mental functioning, while the human form degrades his DNA and will make it harder and harder to revert into a normal human body with each use of the device. Luke reassures his teammate that this is only a first step. Hopefully they can improve on the tech and deal with this issue. But Clayface starts to feel grim about his future. No matter what form he's in, he's just going to get worse and worse until eventually he's stuck as this mindless creature. After the death of Red Robin, after monsters tearing the city apart, and after Spoiler leaving, their home, the Belfry, is feeling less welcoming to all of them. Cassandra muses on the notion of asking Batwoman for help, dealing with some of her current anxiety, and she doesn't even know how to ask her. She never learned how to talk to people like this, and still struggles with normal, conversational speech. Unknown to her, a woman named Shiva watches the young hero from a distance. She knows Cassandra, and openly promises the League of Shadows are coming for her. Soon. Later, Kate monitors her team, now joined by Azrael, as they battle holographic versions of the Penguin. She is worried about Cassandra, who doesn't have anyone to talk to after Stephanie left the team. Both her and Batman are concerned about Cassandra's true power. Bruce admits if they were ever in a real fight against each other, where the young assassin wasn't holding back, he'd probably lose. She's incredibly strong and a deadly fighter. Batman thinks the two of them should take the young woman out to the ballet, to help get her to open up a little bit, and give her some sense of normalcy. They are both relieved that they have time to focus on this stuff for once, as working with the mayor of Gotham has actually worked quite well. It's been a productive relationship. Crime rates have actually sunk to a record-breaking low, and Bruce overall has been quite satisfied with the experience. On that note, Batman goes to the mayor's office to check in on things, only to find the man brutally crucified. The mayor chokes out the name of his attackers, the League of Shadows, when the police burst in. Unable to convince the officers he is innocent, Batman makes a quick escape and flees the scene, only to be shot on his way out. A visit to Kane confirms this is how the League of Shadows operates and maintains secrecy from even the most powerful organizations in the world. They don't attack directly and have never taken credit for their work. They create chaos and destruction without ever leaving a trace behind. Something big is about to go down. Something that could destroy the entire city. On live television, two newscasters are infected by the Joker gas and stump on the desk, dead. Gas begins to expel into the city, so the team race to help the people. However, surveying a mob of supposedly infected civilians battling each other, Cassandra instantly notices something is wrong. She shouts out to the others, saying these people are just pretending to be infected. The mob suddenly stops moving and surrounds the team, and only then do the detectives notice the people's eyes. They attack, wielding deadly weapons and badly incapacitating both Nightwing and Azrael. Luckily, Clayface has been training with Batman for months now and is ready for a situation just like this. Suddenly, the numbers are much more even. Cassandra spots Shiva watching over this above the fray. She approaches the mysterious woman and the two fight, but Cassandra is no match against the assassin, who incapacitates the young hero. Shiva mocks Orphan, saying it would have been so much better to never know what actually happened to her daughter. Batman and Batwoman rush in to help. Bruce has faced this woman before, but she was holding back the last time they fought. Shiva easily pins Batman to the ground and says he has lost this fight, and with it, the city. The League of Assassins spread out across Gotham, and seeing this, along with learning about her mother, sends Cassandra into a fit of despair. Clayface tries to cheer her up with a collected edition of Shakespeare's writing, and the gesture is enough to get the young hero back into the fight. Across the city, the entire team engages with the League of Shadows, but as Batman monitors them from his cave, he sees them fall one by one. As Batman cries out, he is greeted by Ra's al Ghul. The man disables the cave's defenses and has deliberately led the League of Shadows to the cave. Paralyzing the Dark Knight, Ra's leaves Batman to Shiva, as part of a bargain to keep the peace between his assassins and the League of Shadows. With one last look at the cave, Ra's leaves his old student in silence. With Batman and the entire team down, only one person still remains standing. Cassandra recovers and begins fighting the Shadow's assassins en masse. Working her way through an almost endless sea of enemies, Cassandra finds her way to Shiva. The hero's mother mocks Orphan, saying she is, and always will be alone. But Shiva is wrong. Together the detectives defeat the villain, when suddenly, the woman is shot by Ra's al Ghul. Impressed at the work of these detectives, Ra's seizes the woman's corpse in spite of Cassandra's protests. Noting the fury in the young woman's eyes, Ra's hopes that he will see her again, before vanishing with his forces. With the city saved, things get back to normal in Gotham City, or about as normal as things ever get around here. Batman remains firm that their work is far from done. There are still a lot of unanswered questions, while the experience with Ra's has awakened forgotten memories from his time training with the League of Assassins that Bruce is only starting to put together. War is coming. The colony, the Leagues of Shadows and Assassins, they all point to a bigger puzzle, one they are only starting to put together. Batman knows where to start too. He remembers now, years ago during his training, Batman went down a dark road and tried to use a weapon he never should have touched. Magic. The weapon Ra's used against them, and the one they are going to need. However, before they begin, a more pressing matter awaits. They still have tickets to the ballet. Hello and welcome to Comic Island. My name is Arden, and this is Detective Comics Rebirth Year 1. So we're trying something new out with this video. If you haven't heard, I've been a big fan of Rebirth. But we're a year in, and with most of the comics being published twice every month, it's going to be a real challenge to keep up on all the great comics going forward. But I know people like to have an idea of what's happened so far when they pick up a series, and it can be tough tracking down everything that happens to a series in a given year. To that end, I want to make these sort of guides to help people stay caught up in the ongoing stories coming out of DC these days. Let me know what you think of that, but in the meantime, let's talk about Detective Comics for a moment. I really like this take on the series. The whole idea of making the Detective Comics into a series that focuses on a team is a really fun idea to begin with. It keeps this story distinct from Batman's main series while giving these comics a real sense of voice and direction that they didn't quite have before. It's true it gives the Detective Comics series about as little focus on detective work as it's ever had. It's the only thing I wish they did a bit more of here. We don't get a lot of our heroes solving mysteries or hunting for clues. This is, by and large, a superhero team series. So it's full of big fights, action moments, fun villains, having a cool headquarters, which is nicely explored throughout the comics, and focusing on these really good characters. The Belfry in particular is great, as this sort of iconic setting that could have as much staying power as the Oracle's Tower or the GCPD rooftop. I like how they have this sort of own danger room called the Mud Room, based on Clayface, and it's a cool thematic choice. Now, while I'd like to see more of the mystery-based content in the future of these comics, I do want to be clear. This is a minor problem in a stellar series of comic books. It's more of a preference or a suggestion, rather than an actual problem with this series. For one thing, there's some good mysteries here, especially early on in the colony and later with the League of Shadows. But more importantly than anything else, instead of a focus on the mystery genre, we get a robustly balanced, wonderful bit of character work between these team members. This is a rock-solid roster. Batman is Batman, though I like that he isn't exactly this immortal, indestructible superhero in this series. He's competent, of course, and very tough. That fits in with Rebirth-era Batman quite well, but he can still get hit, and is clearly defined as an imperfect human, as he should be in general, but especially in a story like this. There's great moments with him, from his early interactions with Kate to some later stuff with Cassandra. This is a Batman that genuinely cares about and relies on the people around him, and that's a really strong thing that contributes a lot to this series. The best example of this is the ballet ending with the League of Shadows stories, but we even see it early on when Batman reveals his identity to Kate, only for her to explain she figured it out a long time ago, and was just waiting for him to be comfortable enough to reveal his real name on his own terms. It's a good moment between these two and reflects the strength of Kate's character. She works well as the sort of driving force behind the narrative of these comics, although the focus starts to shift away from her and onto the other team members as we go on. I like that the focus isn't exclusively on her either. I'd say she would be the main character of these stories, but we spend a lot of time with all the team members, and each arc seems to focus on someone else, which is good for any team comic to strike that balance. Some team comics will try and really focus on one person's story or try and cover everyone's story at once. Both of these can work and have worked many times, but I prefer this rotating focus a little better, especially in this story. To that end, it's super fun to see not only Cassandra and Stephanie firmly back in action and part of the DC canon, but also with a huge amount of great story work surrounding them. Both of these characters are used well and have solid arcs throughout the series. And based on the issue that follows the events of the League of Shadows stuff, Spoiler is still likely to be involved in the future content, so I'm glad she hasn't been dropped entirely. It just made sense for a character not to be directly involved in the team for now, given what had happened in the story. Batwing and Azrael are recent additions that haven't been explored much yet, but based on how James Tynion IV is smart enough to focus on these different characters, when he gets around to them, I'm looking forward to it based on what I've seen with how he writes the other characters. Of course, the biggest surprise in all of this was Clayface. I figured he would be an obvious choice for this character as a sort of bruiser mixed in with a comic relief archetype, but not really. He might be the occasional source of a joke or a funny moment, but he's also kind of the most compelling character out of all of them, as the comic delves into his background as an actor and a villain, and his honest attempt at redemption here. With him reconciling with this past behavior and the real problem of his body kind of degrading as he goes along, it's a very good take on what is usually a pretty underdeveloped villain, although I use that hesitantly because that's not been always true in Batman's history, but often is with this character. This isn't the first time a member of Batman's Rogues Gallery has tried to redeem themselves, but rarely is it done as well as it is here. This is where the real strength of Detective Comics lies. The entire roster is very good, and it's fun seeing them interact with one another, and the different relationships that form because of those interactions. That seeing these relationships form because of these interactions is extremely entertaining. It's interesting to see Batman and Batwoman closely work together. They don't do that very often, and this comic really digs into them being family and sharing a lot of the same traits. So it's a unique partnership compared to how Batman usually works with others. When you compare it to Robin or Batgirl, it feels more like a partnership rather than a hero-sidekick relationship. Neither is really a mentor or mentee to one another, and I like the dynamic. But that's not the only cool relationship we see. Cassandra develops a really cool one with Clayface, while I actually like how Tim's romance with Spoiler informs her character after his supposed death. Yes, I haven't forgotten about that business either. We've already talked about this on Comic Island in a couple of videos now, more on Joey's side, and Tim's unusual current status remains a rather important fixture in the Rebirth canon. I quite like how they handled this. Killing Tim off in any capacity would have been rather boring considering how recently we went through all of this with Damian. So, in the very issue he apparently dies, we see, immediately, that Tim is alive. Just everyone thinks he's gone. It's a great example of Rebirth's uncanny ability to give each title a small piece of the bigger story. And so this plot point kind of hangs around as this ongoing theme throughout the entire first year of Detective Comics, and no doubt will continue that way right up until Doomsday and possibly beyond. We don't spend a lot of time dealing with the immediate grief of Tim's death, thank God, because we get way too much of that stuff in comic books in general. But it creates a very interesting dynamic within the detectives. This is most obvious in Spoiler, but everyone seems very cognizant of the fact that they pretty much lost a member on their first real outing as a team. And that changes things. There's a sense of foreboding and concern, and a feeling of loss that is ever present, but never hammered in to an extent it becomes overblown, repetitive, or annoying. This team, this nameless team, which by the way is a rather interesting feature, is a grim collection of detectives. So there's a lot of dark themes, and the characters all trend in that direction, and most have pretty rough lives and origins, and have all very immediately experienced this loss. Yet this comic is far from depressing. The action keeps it fun, the art team does a great job at keeping the story colorful, vibrant, and feeling alive almost, and that's important. In fact, it's truly masterful. It would have been very easy to go overly dark, even by accident. But by keeping the pace moving and the story sort of charging forward, this comic strikes the perfect tone again and again, making it a very easy and enjoyable read. On the other hand, they don't overcorrect and avoid the darkness too much either. It doesn't feel like we're reading something campy or filled with eye-waking jokes to the audience. In fact, I'm impressed at how seriously it takes itself without being too dark and dramatic. So overall, this first year of Rebirth's Detective Comics is, in my eyes, a real success. I had read a couple of these comics before making this video, but going through all of them, I have to say, they really exceeded my already fairly high expectations. I really enjoyed reading these issues, and if this story seems interesting to you, I recommend you check them out for yourself. Or you can pick up Detective Comics from where I left things off at issue 956 from here. That's the whole point of this, is to give you enough of a refresher that you can pretty much go to the store, buy a Detective Comics issue, and have a good idea of what's going on now. In the meantime, I am looking to do more of these in the future, so if there's any Rebirth titles you want to see going forward, definitely let me know in the comments section below. This was actually picked by our patrons. I wanted to give the first topic to them as part of a weekly poll, so if you want to have a more direct say in the week-to-week videos that we make, you should check out our Patreon page to find out how. Just the same for some of the following stuff, definitely let me know if you would like to see the first year of any other Rebirth comics, because I do want to do more of these. I think it's a good way to get people more into these comics. So special thanks to our patrons for picking a great series to start this out with, and finally, don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep reading comics.